Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Institute of Contemporary Art's final Ulysses Jenkins program. My name is Robert Cheney. I'm the Mark J. Leader, Director of Curatorial Affairs, and the Interim Director of Public Engagement here at ICA. It's with great pleasure that I welcome interdisciplinary artist Taji Ra'oof Nahl to ICA tonight. Taji will be in conversation with University of Pennsylvania graduate students Enrique Morales and Will Owen. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to come to ICA to see our current exhibitions, Ulysses Jenkins Without Your Interpretation and Na Kim FCC on 678. ICA is open to public Tuesdays through Sundays from 12 to 6 p.m., and we are always free for everyone. Major support for Ulysses Jenkins Without Your Interpretation has been provided by the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage. I'd also like to acknowledge the generous support of ICA programming made possible in part by the Emily and Jerry Spiegel Fund to support contemporary culture and visual arts, the Lisa Spiegel Wilkes and Jeffrey Wilkes Family Foundation, and Hillary L. and Mitchell Morgan. Now, I'll turn the mic over to Will, Enrique, and Taji for tonight's program. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be in community tonight with everyone here, part of our ICA family, as well as the greater Philly community. We'd like to do a quick round of intros of ourselves, as well as our guest and the current show that we'll be contextualizing tonight's conversation with. So I'll start with that latter point, talking about the Ulysses Jenkins show that is currently up at the ICA. It's one of the two shows that is up, along with the Na Kim exhibition. And the Ulysses Jenkins show is up through December 30th. So we still have a couple of weeks to catch it if you haven't seen it. It's titled Without Your Interpretation. It's Jenkins's first major museum solo exhibition, curated by both Meg Onley and Aaron Cristobale. There is a total run of 9.5 hours of video content, and the exhibit is divided or broken up into 4 sections, which are color-coded in the exhibit space. And each section starts with a quote of Jenkins's memoir. The 4 sections are the allegory of self-empowerment, the artists of the humble infinity, multicultural ideal, and other visions, the conceptual reality. That is a perfect seg into an introduction to myself and my practice. I'm Enrique Morales. I am a second-year Master of Fine Arts student here in the Weitzman School of Design at UPenn. And I'm originally from Chicago. I also call Toronto home these days. And I've been enjoying my time in Philly so far. My practice is centered around a social component. I work within the social practices as well as being installation and lens-based. And I will pass it over to Will for a brief introduction of Taji and his practice as well.
Hi, everybody. Just a really quick moment of gratitude for everybody here. And for taking the time on a Wednesday night to be in conversation with all of us. And with that, I want to invite comments in the chat that we can bring up kind of at any point, but there will be a Q&A at the end. And yeah, my name's Will Owen. I'm also an MFA student at UPenn and a grad lecturer with the ICA program. And I have the immense pleasure to welcome Taji Ra'oof Nahl here in conversation with us. When I guess as like a personal introduction, I think I met you when in front of the Franklin Institute. You were doing an outdoor performance, and I was with Eugene Liu, who I think is maybe the connector that we have. And then I remember seeing your work at the Icebox when you had a residency there. You were like doing these video filmings for a microfilm festival that you've done, I know, a number of times, and just want to kind of say that you've been working within Philly in the experimental sound world and the film world and the fashion world. You hold this like multimodal lens of everything, or you use so many different lenses and ways of working that when we were talking about having this opportunity for the coffee and conversation, it made so much sense to like triangulate your work and Ulysses Jenkins' work, because there's such a strong component of music being so core to the foundation, as well as collaboration. We actually were in the show at the Fringe Festival that Eugene put together, and we were part of the performance together there. So I've had the immense pleasure and privilege to be performing alongside you. And without further ado, I pass the mic to you, Taji.
All I have to say is, just be alone with the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. It's a great honor to be here and be invited. And due to this young man, Will Owens, extending this invitation to partake in this great day celebrating the works of Ulysses Jenkins and seeing the parallels. And my wife is telling me I need to talk louder. So seeing these great parallels that I didn't even know about, they were unknown parallels. I was, how can you say, introduced to Ulysses Jenkins through Kelly Jones. So Kelly Jones did a book, South of Pico, and she came to PAFA and she, had a book signing, and I got the book and I'm going through the book and I'm like, this is me. The artists that were a part of South of Pico book, an exhibition she did called Now Dig This. I said, this is me. This is me. And from that, I got to know Maren Hassinger, Miss Noguti. I was familiar with David Hammond. So now fast forward to Ulysses Jenkins, and I'm seeing, wow, Ulysses Jenkins, we really have a lot of things in common. So hence this invitation for this conversation. I see my work as a artistic journal and social commentary, doing abstraction, and also doing what I like to call artistic journalism. And through video essays, installations, sculptures, do a little painting here and there. So like Owen said, it's interdisciplinary. And my good friend, Terry Adkins, may he rest in peace, who I met some years ago at, through ICA. I like to say with Terry and Ulysses and the whole South of Pico movement that I'm a continuation of that. So with that said, if you want to put the first video up of my granddaughter in the space, this place here is called Ice Station Zero, which is a segment of my greatest studio called the Trip and the Pearl Studio, which is based here in Philadelphia. So the video that Will's going to put up is a segment where my granddaughter and my daughter came through, and my daughter wanted to do some work, and my granddaughter is showing my daughter how to use this Moog synthesizer that I have. So my grandchildren are always engaged. There's no generation gap, no generation gap. We embrace the old, the young, and everybody in between. So,
It's amazing. It's amazing. When you showed us that video, it's like, oh, it's like a perfect segue into this, thinking about Ulysses Jenkins, like studio that he had with so many people coming in and out. Other Visions studio, that was both the name of his band as well as like this platform that many collaborators and family could be a part of. Yeah, so I want
and to the point of other visions, as we continue on, other visions. Now, I have a collective of artists that I deal with in terms of the sonic work, and it's called the Other Sounds of Philadelphia. So, other visions, other sounds of Philadelphia. So this video here was a collaboration with an artist that I met when I received my first grant, the Velocity Grant here in Philadelphia. And this is Allison the Pentecostal. And so she was working with this place called the Quarantine Hospital and Museum down in the south of Philadelphia. And so with that video, and with her doing that work, I said, wait a minute, you work in Quarantine Hospital? I said, I work through an artisan by the name of Benjamin Banneker. And I call Benjamin Banneker artisan because in all his modes of operation and modalities, you know, he's a mathematician, a scientist, astronomer, farmer, land surveyor. And he had an almanac. In that almanac, he featured or he wrote about the yellow fever epidemic. So I said, we got to do something together. And she said, it got to happen. So that's what this video is here. So we fashion ourselves as I'm the doctor and she's one of the nurses. And in the background is the actual Quarantine Hospital. And that was a fantastic project that she put together. And I was fortunate to help and give another dimension by introducing Benjamin Banneker to her project.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and thinking about this work, we have a work of Ulysses Jenkins that will show, and I think that's kind of the way that this conversation will go. We'll play kind of these videos. Not only are we going to be in conversation, but the video works be in conversation with Ulysses as well. So I'll jump to the next to Ulysses piece. Whoa, I think I may have missed. Oh no, we're here. Whoa, sorry. So yeah, this is yeah. So Taji, this was the performance that was in Los Angeles at the Municipal Art Gallery, which was Flying Z, I believe, or Flying, and it's part of the it's part of the exhibition that's in the ICA now. And thinking about this this community that Ulysses has been a part of for so many years, coming out of both Otis College of Art and then extending on from grad school onward with, as you mentioned before, Singan and Goody, the South of Pico artists as well.
Yes, in fact, this is one of the earlier works that I did see of Jenkins, but I didn't see it through Jenkins. I seen it through Nagudi and Hassinger. And I didn't, and at the time, I wasn't privy to who those gentlemen were. All I knew was Nagudi and Hassinger. So to come to find that Jenkins was a major component of this collective. Phenomenal.
Yeah, this is great. And I'll just scroll through these images one more time. Yeah.
So the use of dance and fabric and being in certain spaces, all this is, components of my work. The use of a television, put on top of a trash can. I was like, plug in, folks. We have something to plug into. We have something we want to plug in. And then as part of my practice is, taking the different formats of television shows, variety shows like Johnny Carson show / Dave Chappelle show, PSA, public service announcements. I have another project that's I've been working on but haven't brought it to light yet. Is called the Whistleblowers Awards. And where we take the format of an award show, but the award show is going to be about honoring and celebrating whistleblowers.
That's great. That's great. I'm gonna hop over to the next video. Similar to the Ulysses Jenkins exhibition, we have a lot of video to go through for everybody to see in conversation. So it's an invitation to learn more about your work and more about Ulysses' work as well for the audience. So I'm gonna play this next clip, Expanding Universes.
score for this video here, collaborating with the artists under the banner of the Other Sounds of Philadelphia. His name is Prism. and High Prism is one of the co-founders of Anti-Pop Consortium, and who's that collective is a legendary alternative hip hop collective. And when we started collaborating on works, I thought his rhyme for this particular piece was, apropos, because in this video here, celebrating Benjamin Banneker, and in doing so, I found that in his almanac that he wrote about how he believed that there were more than one galaxy. And you're talking about, this is the late 1700s. And in the late 1700s, there was only two people who came to that conclusion: a gentleman in Germany and Benjamin Banneker. But everybody else, in terms of the community of astronomers, they didn't believe that. And then, of course, some years later, we find that, yes, there are more than one galaxy. And then the term expanding universes are pulled from Buckminster Fuller. And when he talked about the idea of expanding universes. And also one of my favorite artists, who is Ismail Noguchi. So that triangulation of Ismail Noguchi, Buckminster Fuller, and Benjamin Banneker helped to pull this piece together. And then in seeing this video, why I submitted this video, because in the works of Jenkins, him utilizing objects to set the stage to tell his different narratives. And so that's what this is. This is a universe here, and we're expanding on it. So, and he has a video called Planet X, which I love. People, y'all got to go see it. If y'all haven't been down to see this show, y'all got to get down to see the show. Got to go. Planet X.
Taji, can you tell us a little bit about? I mean, I love the fact that you keep bringing up the other sounds of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the sound experimentation that the other sounds are doing? What is sound in particular? Like what role does it play when you're experimenting with work? What does it represent in your work in particular? How do you see it represented within the other sounds of Philadelphia? Because it is something that Jenkins also plays around with as well.
Right. So just the idea of the other sounds, the title of the collective, it comes from being sounds that's not mainstream. So what you'll hear from us is that peripheral sound. There's a small niche community, like Sun Ra, popular as Sun Ra is. He was still in the peripheral. He was still on in another world. So you might hear Sun Ra, people like Laraji. These people are on the peripheral. So the idea is that there is more sounds than MSFSB, the Sounds of Philadelphia. And it's also playing on that, the Sounds of Philadelphia, which I grew up on, the OJs and all those great groups. But yes, there was all the elements, So when I was young, I was like 12, 13 years old. I'm listening to RTI. And I come up in a household that we listen to everything. We listen to classical music, we listen to jazz, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, the Funkadelics, the Pointer Sisters, James Brown, which is another one of my heroes. But in the midst of that, when I found my own voice when it came to sound, me going to the record store buying a record, the first record I ever bought was Weather Report, Sweet Nighter album. And for those who don't know about Weather Report Sweet Nighter album, go on YouTube, put Weather Report Sweet Nighter in, and you'll go on a journey. So with that said, that was me as a young man, 12 years old, finding my own sound, appreciating all those other influences. But when I came to my own, this is what I selected. And so that, in terms of cultivating, some years later, I've always worked around musicians. Music was part of the lifestyle of growing up. My parents used to put on happenings. Back when I was 12, 13 years old, 9 years old, I remember happenings. They always engaged. And when they had their happenings, everybody would come and they would bring the instruments, et cetera, et cetera. And so these are fond memories that I'm actually utilizing in my senior years, because I didn't come up as a musician per se. I was more of an entrepreneur, and I wanted to go to school for journalism, and I was discouraged from that, and the professors discouraging me. I was like, forget this, I'm gonna go out and make some money, because I had family members, my uncle specifically, who were merchants, and so I followed that path. So then years later, I found myself, a friend of mine says to me, I put a video together back in 2010 or 11. And when I put this video out, I put it on YouTube, one of the first videos I ever put on YouTube. And YouTube took it down. This is 2011. Took it down. I'm like, what happened to my video? I spent 4 or 5 hours putting this video together. And what happened was I didn't talk to the corporate office for the people. It was Jamaluddin Takuma and Mark Rebo, good friends of mine. This is sure, Tag, you put up music on your video. We like your video work, da 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 da. And at the time, I was doing quote unquote fashion video for my fashion brand. So when I put this video together, and my friend says to me, he says, Tag, this is Jamaluddin Takuma. He says, you got a Mac, use GarageBand.
I think you may have froze, Taji.
Say that again.
I think you may have frozen. We lost you just for a moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Am
you're
I
back
back?
now. You're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Takuma says, use the GarageBand. So from there, I started using GarageBand to score my video. So the importance of the video, of the music, came as scoring for the video work. And then from that, some years later, I started getting hardware. And then from getting the hardware, because I used to play the piano some, I had a guitar when I was a teenager, but never, like I said, never really pursued it. And then I just slowly started getting hardware and instruments again and putting them in the mix. And then also utilizing the musicians that were around me and doing productions for the video. So that's the journey from that. So once again, it's that communal scenario that's happening that helps cultivate all of this.
Right.
So in fact, I used to manage Jamaluddin Takuma back in the early 70s, not in the 70s, in the early 2000s. And that was crazy managing him. While at the time I had my own gallery on 3rd Street, and that's how I met Terry Adkins. So one of the concepts that I worked through is called Renaissance Report Live. And in Renaissance Report Live is the idea of men with different disciplines, the idea of being a Renaissance man, having different disciplines, and then showcasing them. So back in 2006, I had Jamaluddin Takuma, renowned bassist and composer, who's a very close friend of mine. And also I was managing at the time. Then Terry Adkins, who, about 2006, we were very close friends. I'm going back and forth to the studio, et cetera, et cetera. And I got them two together as well to help, with projects. So, now what I call the Three Amigos. So we were the Three Amigos, and I want to put a program together that says Renaissance Report Live, but that never happened. So the idea was there, the seed for it was there in 2006. And then it didn't get actualized until 2014 was the first Renaissance Report Live. And so I used the same concepts. I brought people in, artists in, and Jamal Adine was one of them. Reached out to Terry, but Terry I think he was in Alaska at the time, so he couldn't make it, and had other artists come through. Who else? Elliot Levine, and a host of others. I'm missing guys' names, so don't strangle me, guys. I'm missing everybody's name, but y'all know who you are. You can see them in the video.
Yeah. I'll play the video now,
Okay.
and then we'll see.
Yeah, man. Those were the good old days. So right here on screen is Jen Berman, another artisan that I met through Terry Adkins, former Terry Adkins student. The host for that evening is Charles Gregory. Charles Gregory, another compadre of mine that he works in the fashion world, and he has his own TV show. And sitting on the couch right there in that particular shot is Eric Honesty, another Renaissance man, musician, composer, fashion icon, fashion designer. He's just, and Eric just opened a new a studio where he bridges all those worlds together. Fashion, furnishings, home furnishings, design, artwork, et cetera. And then that young lady that was in the clip, that's my granddaughter, and she was being interviewed because she had just put on her first stage production. So, once again, start them young. Start them young. So she did a great job with that. And then she did a little segment of what was in the play, in terms of in this Renaissance Report Live. And like I said, this idea was pulled from the idea of Johnny Carson show. I used to love the Johnny Carson show when I was growing up, so. And then I always play, when we do Renaissance Report Live, I like to play Ed McMahon, so people don't know who Ed McMahon is. He was like the person on the side. He would do the announcements and greet people, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then that way I can have my hands in different things organizing when I don't have a stage manager on deck. So,
yeah. It also reminds me of the upstairs portion of the ICA exhibition of Jenkins' work, where they have clips of his curation for for various TV channels. I believe in LA, it's like just outside of LA. So it's like he would have different groups come and perform and do kind of performance art. And he didn't have that position long because it was so experimental, and people weren't ready for this public access channel content at the time. So I think he only had that position for like a year or a year and a half. Someone tell me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I love those clips because it, you know, kind of what you're talking about, where you're hosting a lot of people, you're highlighting a lot of people that you're in community with, and Jenkins would do that constantly, of like pull in, and does pull people in that he wants to support, give platform for, and highlight. And I think that's amazing, including your granddaughter. I think that's I love that. I mean, how, you know, my grandparents didn't do that for sure.
And in fact, now she's 13 now. She goes to a school here in Philadelphia called String Theory and Performance Art, and she's studying ballet. And just earlier this year, I did another Renaissance Report Live, which was the latest one, and back in January, and she participated in that, and you know, it was mind blowing for me, of course. You know, I'm the grandfather, but amazing.
Taji,
yes.
Taji, what do you think? Going off of Will's point, because I think it's such an important point. What do you think is missing in the culture? You know, this, you know, Jenkins did this, you know, you're doing it, you've been doing it, you know, producing, you know, being on the producing side of cultural TV. You know, what do you know, what's the importance of that? What do you think is missing in the current arts media landscape, that we as artists have to do our own cultural production, documentation, and then put it out there? You know, if you're not doing it, we don't know about, you know, who you're highlighting and promoting, you know, local Philly artists, Jenkins doing it in LA on the West Coast. What's missing? What needs to happen so there's more of this?
Well, if you're a communal person, I think it would be something that would happen naturally in terms of a platform. But for what happened with me is, as I said earlier, this is how I grew up. So everything that I'm doing right now was the nurturing that took place in my upbringing. You know, I'm a Muslim, and I came up in a Muslim community. And then us coming up, we always did things together. It was, you know, I used to be called the visitor. I used to go around to different people in the congregation homes. You know, I'm talking about, I'm 18, 19, I'm 16, you know, I'm 24. Now I'm coming to visit with my children when I got married and started my family. You know, so now it's not just me anymore. Now I'm coming to visit, and I'm bringing one child with me and my wife. Then they end up being 4. So I have 4 children. So now, you know, I'm 29 and I'm still going to visit. We still going to visit. So that's the visiting side of that's that communal nature that I was always nurtured in. And at the same time, it has translated to my children. They do the same thing. It's like, it's mind-boggling how that trait has passed on. So I say to artists, be open to celebrate and collaborate with other artists, because, you know, I don't come from art school, you know, and I hear constantly from artists that I'm supposed to focus on my practice and that's it. You know, if I'm painting this here and I'm that, only time I have somebody in the studio if they're a subject for my painting. Well, what about if you paint and then you bring 5 other painters and listen, let's do a communal paint project. Let me paint a little bit on your canvas and you paint a little bit on mine, or something like that, where there's this constant exchange. So that's something, I don't know. But I do know that also in my upbringing, I was taught to do for self. Never wait on somebody else to do it, and, you know, give you the platform. Create your own platform. You know, so hence the Renaissance Report Live. You know, Channel 6, Channel 3, Channel 12, UHF, you know, stations. They never called me and said, "Hey, Tad, you want to come do something?" You know, when I had my gallery when I was on 3rd Street, you know, we were featured a few times in clippings here and there, you know, this newspaper, that newspaper. But there was no outreach to give me a bigger platform. So I created the platform, and you find a way. And just like I said back in 2006, when I had the original idea for Renaissance Report Live, only reason why it didn't happen because I didn't have the revenue really to pull it off the way I wanted to. That's the only reason why it didn't take place. So because of that, all these little things are just like registered here. How can I overcome not having the revenue to do X, Y, Z? So, what they call DIY, find a way. So that's what I'm saying. That's one thing I say to people. And I always reach out to people. And another scenario is the fact when, as a gallerist, I was a curator, or I am a curator, even though I don't have my gallery anymore, I'm a curator, so I'm curious. As a curator, you should be curious about other people's work. That's part of, what's going to drive me to find out about this person and that person. So in that, I'm constantly curating. So I've never put that banner down, so, and then I find a platform like my microfilm festival. Feature a lot of my work, of course. However, but in the midst of that, I bring other artists' video work in the mix. And, to speak a little more about the microfilm festival, the microfilm festival is you're in a space, 4 walls, all walls have projections on. And, I try to, in any way, depends on the space and revenue. But 4 walls, so you're immersed in the projections. I was doing this before I even knew about what video mapping is. So I'm like, video mapping. I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years and never knew about video mapping. So that idea of taking and making this space immersive in the video projection, and then doing a live scoring over top of it. And where the live scoring aspect came was when I was on 3rd Street, I had a gentleman come one evening, because 3rd Street used to have what they call First Fridays. And First Fridays was that gallery stayed open late, and come and have your hors d'oeuvres, et cetera, and see the artwork, and then I would have happenings. So I had happenings before I even understood the term happening. Like I said, So anyway, so this one gentleman, Thomas Spiker, he was doing a thing called the Mobile Pleasure Lab, which he would bring in. So he had one projection, but it was a montage. It was Beach Blanket Bingo, The Blob, the scenes from The Godfather. He did this mashup of video work, and then the band would play live to what was happening on the screen. So if it was a real somber, laid-back scene from, say, the Star is Born, they calm down the instrumentation, be more subtle with it. If it was The Shining, then it would get more eerie and more eerie and more eerie, and then until it blow up. And then now it's a scene from The Godfather. Now, it's violins and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I took that idea and ran with it, so I'm always a student, so that's another thing, always be a student, so I'm 60, going on 62, and I'm still learning and still studying, in which that's the whole premise of another concept called Adam Vocabulary Club.
Yeah. This is great. No, this is great. This is like, thank you for bringing us into your like really expansive practice. I just want to throw on, I think something that we've been talking about a lot, and that you just talked about also, is this level, these layers of community. And I wanted to throw on the Dream City clip of Ulysses Jenkins, because it, for those of us who haven't seen the exhibition at the ICA, it is a film that's edited from a 24-hour performance that happened on the cusp of Ulysses Jenkins' birthday and Senga Nguti's birthday. So it's like this wild program, and then this is the video that is edited. And something to note that's kind of like personal in this like familial way, in a similar way of like being a part of this community that's like family that Taji's mentioning, is that they opened the exhibition on that birthday, like that cusp of the birthday for the ICA part of the exhibition. The exhibition will move to Los Angeles after it closes in ICA, or it closes in Philly. But yeah, I think that's really important to know. Anyway, I'll put on the clip. Sorry to keep chatting. Okay. But yeah, maybe for the sake of time, I'll just turn down the audio from the video, and then we can kind of keep chatting.
Cool. Yeah, like this montage here this is some historic stuff. You're talking about this was before any of this stuff that I'm doing. I mean, and it's like all the similarities, like, when you made this offer, I was like, these unknown parallels is tremendous. And I do this piece that's in homage to Remar Building called Remar Building. And Remar Building is a series of video collages. And that's all, and that's that whole series. And right now, I think it's like 7 of them so far, And it's like Remar Building slash Tagloni, Remar Building slash, uh, what is that called? Essay, Remar Building slash, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this whole video collage scenario, once again, is named after a artist who worked in collage, Remar Building, who was one of the founding members of the Spiral Group. And then I have a collective that I spearhead called Two Spiral, which is a continuation of that idea of artisans coming together. So once again, even though I didn't know about Studio Z and the other Vision Studio, but I did know about the Spiral Collective. So once again, I pulled from that, utilize that as a base to come together with other artisans and to do work, et cetera, et cetera. So always giving recognition to those who came before. That's very big with me, because like I said, as a person who studies scriptures, is a way to keep the scriptures live. People talk about, Adam and Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Abraham and Moses. They just did I think Russell Crowe just did a movie, Noah. So, keeping always, history is not just to be, oh, that's an old story. No, you're supposed to be able to pull from history to develop things. And so that's what all this is. I have developed this video series based off of understanding what Remar's Building contribution, And I remember one time I listened to a talk that what's his name? Jack Whitten did. And somebody asked Jack Whitten, why do you name your paintings? And these are abstract paintings. Name them after people, because he said these are the people that inspire me. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and this person and that person. And so the same here. And so.
Yeah. I think something that is still really poignant that I remember we talked about really early on, and maybe this is one of the last things that we chat about before the Q&A begins, is that you in the first gallery room at the Ulysses Jenkins show, there's a series of television screens that have like kind of these odes to people, or like these like there's the momentous occasions, which is for Charles White, and then also the David Hammond, like a studio conversation with David Hammond before moving to New York City from Los Angeles. And and so these kind of like odes, I'm wondering if you might talk about when we were there, you were like, oh, this reminds me of your experience with the late and incredible Terry Adkins, and I was wondering if you could speak about your kind of your homages or your experience with that.
Like you said, I've done the same thing with Terry. I not only was Terry a friend, but I was a collector of Terry's work, and also I presented Terry's work. I did some major shows up in New York, and in the mix of the show, I had furnishings, mid-century design furnishings, and abstract artwork. And Terry's work was one of the features, and I sold quite a few. And this is 2006, 2007. So when Terry passed, I had the collection of works that were my personal. Um, I took and did an open studio tour because at the time it was like 2009. My gallery closed. I couldn't sustain after the crash of 2008, and I tried to reopen, and I reopened on Chestnut Street, and I was only there for maybe 9 or 10 months or something like that, and closed. But some years later, once Terry transitioned, I think it was 2014, in the spring or the summer of 2014, I decided that I was going to present my collection of Terry's work in a gallery setting. And in doing so, I found this place in Strawberry Mansion section of Philadelphia, and I mounted a show, and it was a personal show because it was for me to capture. So like if I had did a solo show of Terry's work in my gallery, and that was my homage piece, one of my homage pieces to Terry. I miss that brother, man. He was like a big brother to me, him and Jamaluddin, because I'm the oldest of 4 children, and I'm the only male. So I didn't have any older brothers. So that's, Terry and Jamal are like my older brothers,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Taji, we want to leave some time for some Q&A as well, and I think we've gotten some questions already, and some of them will take us back to these very notions of building community and family, and the idea of choosing your own family. And so why don't we open up the Q&A for a bit, and we've gotten some questions coming in already.
There's one that I think is a really amazing question that is the most recent one that maybe we can start there. And it's something that I fully am curious about as well, which is from Aaron Bernard. Hey, Aaron. Performance. This is a wondering. It's posed as a wondering for you. Performance as documentation and documentation as performance seems to be a thematic throughout both the work of Taji and Jenkins. How do you plan for both in parallel? Like in terms of the work is the work and the capture of the work is the work, or like the filming or the representation of the work is the work.
Well, so in terms of the representation of the work, that's where the editing comes in. So when I'm trying to give the narrative, be it linear or let it be a montage or an aspect of a non sequitur, it depends on what I'm trying to do with that particular project. But I do use those different modes. And the importance of it is because, prime example, my gallery, when it opened, there's very little footage of what took place in that gallery. And people tell me that what I've done with the Taji Modern Gallery was historic. And I understood that it had its importance, but at the same time, I didn't take enough documentation of it. Like times when Terry came down and would sit all day in the gallery with me. I don't have any documentation of that. I have just a couple of photographs of here and there. Same thing with Jamaluddin. I don't have documentations of the art happenings that took place. I got a couple of articles when journalists came through and they did their thing, et cetera, et cetera. But that's about it. But it wasn't, when I put my first website together, was around about 2003 or 4, somewhere around there. I have some of that footage. But then I have this whole another thing that's part of my practice is the lost files. I'm like, I got gigabytes and gigabytes of lost footage that I actually lost, deleted or crashed computers, et cetera, et cetera. And you would never get none of that stuff back unless somebody else was there and they said, hey, Taji, guess what I found, and then send it to. And that has been happening recently, a little bit, because I have been putting out asking people, hey, if you have any footage from, something that I put together, please send it to me, so. And I still lose footage. I just lost footage last month. So this is crazy, but yeah, documentation, because the history is important. And then, like I just listened to a talk between Carrie Mae Weems and Valerie Cassell Oliver, just about a week ago. And in that conversation, this was around the performance of Radical Presence, and in that took place back in 2013. So the scholar and curator Oliver says, I have to put a book out. I have to do this where after this performance is done, I have to do a book, because I don't want the historians saying that this didn't take place or it took place, and then they tell it the way they want to tell it. Or it was like, well, y'all did what y'all did, but where's the documentation of it? So the importance of the physical documentation, the physical actual books where you can go to the library, et cetera, et cetera. So it's highly important. And just like, I tell people I have no bones is, saying about, one day, God willing, my work will be in the Tate, it'll be in the Hirshhorn, et cetera, MoMA, et cetera. But it won't get there if I don't do what I'm doing right now. Because Ulysses Jenkins is a prime example of it. This is his first retrospect, his first. And this man been working since 1970s. And the job that the two curators did, these young ladies, is phenomenal, and it's very important. This is vital stuff. This monograph is amazing. It's amazing. Everybody needs. You leave this, order the book, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you. And what happened here, Dr. Kelly Jones. I did, even in Dr. Kelly Jones' book, she only mentioned Ulysses maybe 3 or 4 times. So there's not a lot of reference like the other artists that she referenced in the book. So I was like, okay, I know about him. I've seen a couple of videos, and that was about it. And then and how I found about the show was my intern said to me one day, he says, brand new intern, Enrique Jenkins. And he says, I asked him, so who do you like? He said, I'm into Ulysses Jenkins. I'm like, I'm like this, and I had to contain myself. I'm like, what do you know about Ulysses Jenkins? Because once again, he's on a peripheral. And it came out maybe 2 weeks later that, he went to the exhibition, which I didn't know was an exhibition. I had no clue. But I'm in a friend's studio, Theodore A. Harris, another scholar, great artist, Renaissance man. I'm in Theo's studio, and sitting in his studio is like, Tad, you want to watch this artist talk with Ulysses Jenkins? I thought Ulysses Jenkins has passed, even though I didn't know much about his work, but just because of his age, because I haven't heard him in conversation. His work hasn't been brought up. So I had thought he passed. So we watched this artist talk, and then I'm getting a text from Will talking about, hey, Taj, I'm back in town. I'm like, you back in town? Because hey, Will goes out of the country a lot, does his practice. And I'm back. And in fact, I'm at the ICA. Do you want to have this coffee and conversation around Ulysses' work? I'm like, huh? As we're watching the artist talk with the 2 curators and Jenkins, I get this text on my phone. I showed my phone to Theodore. Theodore, I got chills. Look, He just texted me this. We're watching. So let me be
Taji,
quiet.
Taji, can you repeat the name of the book, of the text that you were just talking about? Someone in the chat is asking for that.
Kelly Jones, Dr. Kelly Jones, South of Pico. Excellent book, gotta get it. Essential. This is an essential. If I was a professor, this will be #1 book in the class. And unfortunately, it's only about West Coast artists. So now it would be, all right, who did a book on East Coast artists that was working in the same movie? I don't know. So if somebody can answer that question, I need that book.
Taji, you just brought up the idea of the classroom. If you were the instructor or the teacher, this would be required reading. We've got a question from someone in the audience tonight about this idea of normalizing, how do we normalize this practice of connection as process that you mentioned earlier tonight, using it as pedagogy. How do we normalize that in the classroom?
I'm not an academic, so I'm not in a position to answer that question. I'm self-taught. I didn't go to the only time I go to a university is when I'm studying on my own, and I do that a lot. I've always done that. Like I said earlier, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, when I was in college, it was like I wasn't getting no support for what I wanted to do. Like I said earlier, I wanted to be a journalist, and I wasn't getting no support for that. So, and I didn't have the resolve to fight through that. But my journey is my journey. So I'm here today to tell you, for those of you in art school, and if you are engaged in what I'm saying, you have to find the resolve to do that. If you think that is needed, you have to set the platform up and you have to seek it out. Because everything I've done, I have sought out. Everything. And like I said before, all these things, the nurturing that I had as an adolescent, all this stuff is already in me. Me doing film work. I used to show videos. One of my favorite toys was a video projector when I was 9 years old. And I used to invite friends and family over, close all the doors in the hallway at the second floor. So 3 in the afternoon, the sun is blaring, and get to the second landing of our home, and it's pitch black, and I'm showing my video. Bugs Bunny and the Flintstones, et cetera, et cetera. I was 9 years old. I'm 60 now, and I'm showing video work.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to school for this. I learned how to edit from artisans that I was collaborating with. I would put an art happening together, and one of the artisans knew about how to edit film. Classic Reinvention. Shout out to Classic Reinvention, one of my great collaborators. And he taught me how to edit film. I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. So somebody taught me, and then from there, YouTube University. Or I call up Classic, hey, how you do X, Y, Z? Really, you have to have the self-motor to go after what you want.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent.
We hate to start winding down, but looks like we have time for one other question. If someone in our audience tonight has another thought or a question or a musing or a wondering, like we had from Aaron earlier. But we've got time for one more if anyone has any thoughts.
And just to note, we do have a question in the chat that's a very specific question about the Comprehensive Employment Training Act, which was a federal program supporting artists in the 70s and 80s that Singa and Marin were a part of. But it's so specific that I don't. It seems like a research. Part of research that you're doing, and I would recommend that you reach out to the ICA about that and the heritage of funding that they may have done, because I know that Meg and Aaron, the curators, did like years and years of research with Ulysses for this show in the studio and about the community that he's a part of. So I would recommend reaching out to the ICA, to Meg. I think that and Aaron, they're like such experts of their own experience when it comes to the research for it, that might give more clarity. But unfortunately, I don't have so much of an answer, Virginia. But thank you for your question in regards to funding in the 70s and 80s in the U.S. But I guess maybe I have a question. What are you working on now?
Well, currently I have a show up at the Cherry Street Pier. It's a group show called Voices and Visionaries that I'm a part of. And then, so everybody, the show is still up until the end of January. So if you get a chance in Philadelphia, or if you're not in Philadelphia, fly down, drive down, Voices and Visionary at Cherry Street Pier. And in fact, who else is in that show? Eco Fan, Sid Carpenter. Oh man, I'm missing people's names. That's one of the things you get old. I'm partly, but when you go to Philadelphia Sculptures website, everything is there. And in fact, on the website is some video footage from the happening that we had, and also all the other artists. And then also I'm working on another microfilm festival, preparing for that in the spring, and also another Renaissance Report live as well. So more iterations of that. And then I have 5 other projects and the solo show coming up. So there's a lot of stuff in the works. 2 solo shows coming up, actually. Yeah. So we're in the process of a lot of stuff. And for everybody who wants to go to my website, aroof.com, I will spend the next week or so updating, because I don't update it like I should, but it will have all this information from the ICA, from the Cherry Street Pier exhibition, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, alhamdulillah.
This is great. We actually have one question. I think maybe we have time to slip it in. Wondering from Stefania, the philosophy and work of J.I. Moreno in sociodrama society may be an interesting part of conversation around teaching. That's kind of like teaching and community. And Stefania is wondering if you are familiar with this philosopher, Moreno.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar with him at all. Never heard of him. And but my philosophy is Quranically based. Everything I do starts from the Holy Quran. So the idea of neighborly needs, which is one of the great tenets of Al-Islam, being wanting for your brother what you want for yourself. So if I have 4, then I don't have 4, I have 2, because I'm giving my brother 2. So that idea of exchanging and sharing what you have to offer is that's the base of my practice. And why I love sharing and educating. I've been an educator, outside being a gallerist and entrepreneur since I was a teenager. Always was in some type of teaching capacity. However, not through traditional academics, meaning at a university or what have you. Yeah. I used to be an imam some years ago, and I used to do Islamic, or was called an Islamic chapel, and I did that for like 15 years. So hence the teaching, the element that's you'll see in the work about disseminating information That's why that's important in my work as well. You know.
Yeah. And Ulysses is still teaching, I believe, at Otis.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. When I see that, I'm like, wow, he's
Incredible.
still, yeah, incredible. Yeah.
And I think about there's a video in the second room in the gallery where about the dog reel, this editing style that he was developing was part of like a practice for his students, like a development for his for an assignment for his students to experiment with editing. And thinking about how that like teaching style then influenced and really embedded his like practice from then on in a similar way where like so much of your upbringing and your kind of experience is still influencing every part of what you're doing, sharing platform in a really generous way that does call in kind of like Ulysses shared platform, other visions, other sounds of Philadelphia, these unknown parallels that you've been really generous and like has been a total pleasure and total privilege to be in conversation with you. So yeah, I think
because the first time I ever brushed my teeth in public was when I was with Will Owen at the Fringe. He had this orchestration of people brushing their teeth.
that was definitely pre-COVID times. But that's true. You were part. Yeah, I had the electric toothbrush community choir.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I loved it. And I was like, I love this. Like goosebumps. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for everybody for coming. Thank you, Enrique, for helping develop this together. Thank you, Taji. Thank you, Taji. Thank you for all your work and this like incredible generosity and inspiration that you've been able to share with all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Everybody at
Taji.
ICA, yeah.
And
Everybody at ICA.
Yeah, shout out to the ICA for hosting this. Shout out to Derek, who helped really do so much of making the Zoom happen. Thank you to Karen, our captioner, who's been present with us, and as well as everyone. Thank you, Taji, again, and Enrique. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Everyone.
Peace be with you all.